What led me to Islam is, at a very personal level, my husband, those many years ago, before we got married, when we met, none of us were Muslims. He was also a Catholic, a staunch one at that. And so while we were still growing up and just finding out about life, along the way he became a Muslim. And we were like, what's this? How does such a staunch Catholic become a Muslim? So that's how my story into Islam started. I wanted to find out, what is this religion that my husband now, what has really made him change his mind? Because it's a very big shift to move from, say, Christianity into Islam. People find it easier to move from, say, Catholic to maybe an evangelical church, but within the realm of Christianity. But for you to move away from Christianity completely into a new religion like Islam was really a point of curiosity. So I started asking questions about Islam. Why do you do this? Why do you do this? And he was practicing. So, it's Ramadan, okay. So what do you do during Ramadan? He explains. You have to pray 5 times a day. Okay, why? I've always been very curious. I'm a journalist, so I was asking questions. And I think that's just how my journey into Islam started. So I started reading about Islam. We used to have very intense discussions, sometimes arguments. I remember challenging him once that, so you're thinking that all those around 1 billion Catholics are wrong, and you think Islam is the correct thing? And he says, maybe. Find out. So he was always throwing the ball back to me. Find out. And if I needed to read something, of course, we didn't have very good content. Right now, we have information all over, but there were still books to read. There were lectures to listen to. So really, my journey into Islam was, it found me along the way. I did not necessarily seek it out. It took about 4 to 5 years, just asking questions, reading about it, listening to lectures. Some things were starting to make sense. Some things were still not making sense. We're having those intense discussions. And I remember, as I mentioned earlier, I was very active in church. Slowly I started withdrawing because something was, now I was caught in between 2 religions. Islam is saying something different, my Catholic faith is saying something different, and I'm right in the middle of it. And some things are starting to make sense, and yet I'm still a Catholic. So it was a bit of, how do I balance? So I became less active. The church activities. And just before I finally decided I'm taking my Shahada, I stopped going to church for about maybe 3-4 months. I was like, I need to clear my head. Either I'm going on with my faith as a Catholic, or maybe I might be changing to Islam, and I cannot mix the two. So it was like a time of reflection. And that time I was staying with my siblings, my brothers and sisters, and they noticed that I was not as active in church, that I had even stopped going to church. And they knew I was reading a lot of stuff on Islam. So slowly, and later on they actually confessed to me and said, we knew you were on your way because you stopped doing a lot of things related to the church, and you're listening a lot to Islamic lectures and reading. So we knew maybe there was somewhere you're trying to make your decision. And finally, what made me actually now decide this is it. In one of those discussions with my husband, remember we were not married by then, he told me, you know what, all these questions, why don't we just get a copy of the Quran? Or it's either him who suggested, or I said, actually now I want to read. I've listened to the lectures, I've read the books. Can I now have a copy of the Quran, a translation? Let me read it. Because there was already doubt. Things were not as clear. So I needed to read this book so that I see for myself what it says. It's like I had been tiptoeing around it, listening to the lectures and reading books, but not reading the actual book. So I wanted to read it. And I remember he even gave me the money to go and look for it. I have that copy of the Quran till today. It's a treasure for me. Tiny book, the Arabic translation. The Arabic with the English translation. I even know where I bought it in some shop in town. I bought the book. I said, okay, even when I was going home, I was feeling, today is the day. I need to find out what the Quran is all about. And believe me, I read first chapter. It was like, okay, it doesn't sound very different from if someone has been a Christian. The prayer, it's called what? Our Father. It's called Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, and all that. So I was like, this matter doesn't sound very different. So let's move on. So I moved to the second chapter, Baqarah. And wow, I read, I think, the first and second verses, and I was like, no way. This book has, I normally say this book has an attitude. It's like, this is the book. It's either you take it or you leave it. It has no errors. It's the guide for mankind. And it's almost like it's telling you, take it or leave it. In Kiswahili, unasema haikubembelezi. A very authoritative language and tone. I was like, here is something. And I just knew deep inside, I think this is it. I have to make up my mind. It's very interesting that there are a number of similarities between the Christian faith and the Islamic faith. And sometimes it's just that we haven't, for us Muslims, maybe we haven't found time to really sit down with the Christians and just explain that we have so much in common and just explain what the differences are. So for example, even when I was researching about Islam, before I even took the Shahada and became a Muslim, I was able to know that Mary, in Arabic that's Maryam, the mother of Jesus, is a figure that is recognized in Islam and is given a lot of respect. That there's a whole chapter in the Quran called Maryam. That's chapter 19. I was amazed because as a former Catholic, Mary, the mother of Jesus, is also given a lot of reverence. So now, as a Muslim, the difference is, what role does Mary play? Muslims are very clear that she's one of the best women that were ever created. In fact, she's the only woman that a whole chapter is mentioned about her in the Quran. The story of the birth of Jesus Christ, Isa ibn Maryam, the son of Mary. Both Muslims and Christians believe about the Immaculate Conception, that she got pregnant without having known a man. That is all there in the Quran. The angel Gabriel, the Christians will know. In Islam, Arabic is angel Jibril. It's the same one who came to give her the message. The message is the same. And so the similarities are there. But now, for me as a Muslim, what I had to deal with was the issue of what is the role of Jesus Christ. For Christians, Jesus Christ is, for those who have the Trinity, the God Father, the God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So there's some divinity that is given to Jesus Christ in Christianity. But in Islam, Jesus is one of the major prophets that were ever sent on earth. But he is not God. So when you are a Christian, that's the biggest challenge you have to deal with. Because that's the foundation of Christianity. How do you wake up and decide that Jesus is not God? So where is your faith? Because in Christianity, in fact, the death in Christianity, the death or the crucifixion of Jesus and his rising again forms the essence of Christianity. The concept of sins being forgiven and people being saved. But a Muslim is telling you, no, actually, he's a human being. He was one of the major prophets, but he's not God. Islam tells you there's a verse in the Quran that is very categorical. I'll paraphrase it in English. that we did not crucify him. So a Christian is caught. What do you mean if he was not crucified? So what's the foundation of my faith? So if, as a Muslim, I look back, I really had to deal with those questions. Look at the similarities and try and understand the belief system about Jesus and Mary from the Islamic point of view, and try to let go of my previous point of view as a Christian. And I know most people who might be on that journey of trying to, understand even the two religions, that's normally one of the biggest challenges. Yeah. I'm still the only Muslim at home. I keep praying, Ya Allah, someone see what I'm doing and follow me and use me as an example. But again, in Islam, it's very humbling that hidayah or guidance comes from Allah. So as much as I would love to see many people of my family join Islam, it's really not in my control. I can only try to be the best Muslim possible. So my experience with non-Muslims, I'll mostly use my family, my mom, my dad, my brothers and sisters. I think I'll use my mom. When I became a Muslim, she was extremely affected. She was sick, literally. She had to be taken to hospital. She was admitted in hospital. Why? Because of the misconceptions she had had about Muslims. And she was looking at her daughter and thinking, my daughter is gone. I became a Muslim at a very interesting time. I was actually doing my master's and I became a Muslim. So it was such a big contradiction. My family was looking at me like, you can't be doing your master's and you're becoming a Muslim. Those are two very different things because of the misconception that education is not valued in Islam, more so of a woman. So how can you be doing your master's and at the same time you become a Muslim? So there are all those misconceptions that my mom was dealing with. Your daughter's education is now gone. She's just going to start putting on these black outfits and I don't know, praying, facing which direction and stuff like that. But with time, I've realized that my mom went through all those emotions. She asked her questions and she faced her fears. And I believe my relationship with her has become better. I hope and pray every day that I become a better daughter as a Muslim, because actually I'm expected to be a better child as a Muslim. Actually, it's expected of me. It's a command, part of the Islamic faith. For my dad, it's a journey. We have our moments, but the beauty about my family is no one felt. I didn't feel any what. They didn't sideline me in any way. I was not forced to do anything. I didn't go through any mistreatment. They let me be. They thought I was mature enough. They thought I was old enough. They had their misgivings, but they gave me the benefit of doubt. And it's a journey I'm on every day because they keep asking questions. They want to know. But I think it's now about 16 or 17 years, so they've realized it was not a joke. Because I kept telling them, I'm sober. I know what I'm doing. It's tough. It's different. It's bold. But it's the best decision for me. And I think with time they've understood. For my experience with Muslims, that's a totally different ballgame. I've had the best support from Muslims. When I embraced Islam, I went for classes. Remember my husband now, when I became a Muslim, of course, we were not married then. With time, alhamdulillah, things fell into place and we formalized the marriage. And then I went for classes at Jamia Mosque in Nairobi for about 2 years. We do certificate, diploma, and almost a higher diploma. So 2 years of studying Islam so that I got my foundation right. So that when I'm speaking about Islam, it's not emotions. If someone asks me a question, I should back it up. Because Islam encourages faith with knowledge. I have to believe, but I also have to have knowledge to support what I believe in. So I think that grounding has helped me. So sometimes my experience with Muslims has been lovely. Of course, I'm lucky. Sometimes I joke and say I have 2 families. I have my non-Muslim family, which is biological, and I have my Muslim family, which are brothers and sisters because of Allah. So I've had very good experiences. Of course, some of the challenges even within Muslims is the stereotype that Muslims are only from a certain ethnic group, or from a certain part of this country. So when you introduce yourself, sometimes even fellow Muslims are not as welcoming because they think, no, Muslims are only from a certain ethnic group, So we also deal with that. Or you walk into a room and even sometimes you're the only Muslim, you're the only woman sometimes, and you're the only Muslim, and people start talking to you in Kiswahili, assuming that if you're a Muslim, then typically either you're from Coast, or maybe you have not gone to school, so you might not understand Kiswahili, and then you start talking in English, and they get very surprised. So the experiences have been very mixed. Yeah, I never stopped being a Muslim. Islam is not a Sunday thing. Islam is not a Friday thing. Islam is not one day of the week. Islam is every day. Islam is every minute. So the challenge has been, especially for those of us, included, who are professionals, have been in employment for a good number of years. Now I'm running my own consultancy in communications and branding and marketing. Just the fact that I had to change my dress code. Remember, I became a Muslim when I was very mature. I was working, I was doing my master's. So imagine the first semester I was not covered. Then comes semester 2, I'm covered. So I'm being asked, you're having a bad hair day? I'm like, no, I'm not having a bad hair day. I'm a Muslim. They're like, no way, you can't be a Muslim, how? So you have to explain, and when you're a professional with your colleagues, it's an intellectual discussion. They want to understand why you have made this decision, and the easiest route people take is it because of marriage? You become a Muslim because of marriage? I'm like, no, it just made sense to me. What do you mean it made sense to you? So I had to keep explaining. I had to do coffee dates with friends and family to explain to them. I had to change my dress code. I remember I went to my parents that December before I became a Muslim, practicing officially 1st of January, I think 2006. So the previous December, I intentionally went home. My mom and my sister and my brothers, they stay in different towns. So I actually stopped by and I was telling them, you know what, from January, I'll be a Muslim. So my dress code is going to change. So I didn't want to shock them. I didn't want them to hear from other people. I wanted them to hear it from me. So I had to change even my dressing. So that's a lifestyle change. It's a life-changing thing. So I struggled with, initially, like all of us, when we join Islam, changing your dress code. And I think Allah has said it even in the Quran. Women, we tend to show off. We want to, you look good. The beauty industry, the hair and cosmetics are $1 billion industry because we like showing off. So one of the toughest challenges for a Muslim woman who is a professional, is to cover up, to be modest, to go to the office and be identified as a Muslim even from your dress code. Covering your head, people think it's easy. It is not. It is not. It's one of the toughest things that a woman has to do, to cover themselves. Because we are just created that way, to show off, and men to look. So now you don't want them to look. Or men have been seeing you previously, imagine, maybe colleagues or the college mates who had seen me before. Now you're covered up. So they're wondering, what's wrong? Do you have to cover up even if you have become a Muslim? I'm like, yeah, I have to. And I remember an incident, if you'll allow me, I'll share. During my classes, I remember I mentioned I was doing my master's at the University of Nairobi. We had a very strict lecturer who used to say, when you enter my lecture room or my class, you don't go out. And classes used to start from about 5:30. So during Maghrib time, around 6:30, it's during his lecture. And remember, he has said, no movement. If you come late, you stay out. If you enter class, you don't leave. That's the challenge I faced. Do I walk out of this class because it's Maghrib? Or do I stay? He decided I'm walking out. I will go. So I went day 1. I think he was wondering what's wrong with this lady. I said people should not go out of my class. I went day 1, day 2, day 3. Then a few times later, I had him, when I walked out of the class to go do my prayers, I had him commenting, what's wrong with this lady? Why does she always walk out of my class? Is it that she has to, some alluding to, is it that I have to use the washroom, or what is it? Why do I always have to walk out of class? And I remember one of my friends who had been in high school together. I think we were doing the same master's classes. He said, no, she goes to pray. Oh, and the lecturer was like, is that what she goes to do? Then tell her to pray for all of us. So once he realized why I was going out, he was even supportive. So as a professional, whether you're in college, whether you're at work, you're a brand. As a Muslim, you're a brand, and people are always looking at you. What will you do? What will you not do? And they're always trying to stop you. For the non-Muslims are like, it can't be that serious. In fact, some of the challenges, even fellow Muslims, you can be I remember working in a place where we were both Muslims, and you're covered and the other person is not covered. Or you don't shake hands of men who are not your mahrams, and the other person shakes the man's hand. So they ask you, both of you are Muslims, why are you not shaking and she's shaking? So you're caught in between. Who is trying to practice, you're being questioned on why you seem to be either the one on the extreme, the misconception. So being a Muslim and a professional is a challenge every day. But as I mentioned, once you have done your studies, once you're very well grounded in your religion, then you have stuff to back up. When, for example, if someone asks me, Umi, why do you cover up? Because we know even there are some leaders in the public eye who don't cover up. So you ask, so why do you have to cover up? Is it because of your husband? Muslims, women are what's the word? We're normally told we are oppressed. Yes. The first thing that a Muslim woman should say, why do you cover yourself, is because I am obeying Allah. He is the one who has said in the Quran that we should cover ourselves as a sign of modesty. So I don't do it for man, I don't do it for my husband, I don't do it for anyone else. First and foremost, I do it for Allah because I'm an obedient servant. He has asked me to cover, let me cover. The other reasons are reason number 2 or 3 for my husband or to keep everything else is secondary. So once that is in your head as a Muslim woman, then it's even a joy to cover yourself. But if you have other reasons, I'm doing it for my husband, I'm doing it for my father, I'm doing it for my family, I don't want to embarrass my family if they find me not covered, then it becomes very hard to cover yourself. And there's a word we use, we call it the struggling hijabi. The struggling hijabi is where your hijab is up, you have to show a bit of hair so that people know that you also have hair. Maybe you've put some color, you've put some henna. So you're trying to say, I'm not as bad, I also have hair. You want to show, or you leave it on your neck. So it's a journey, as I said, and we're all at different places. But the ultimate reason why Muslims cover themselves, ladies, is because they are obeying a command from Allah. But that will not come naturally. That will not come overnight. It's a process. It's a journey. You will have to go through those classes to understand why you have to cover yourself. Then eventually it will be the easiest thing to do. You can imagine at home right now. In fact, if I'm walking out and maybe I've not covered, I'll be told, kwani leo unatoka na hujajifunga? Those are non-Muslims. Because it has become a lifestyle and they have come to appreciate that I do it because it's my religion and I'm obeying my Lord. I'm not doing it for anyone else.